First thing I'll say is that I owe my life to a Jewish Messiah who spent his early years as a refugee, and through his life and teaching, he revealed that God is love. And out of God's great love for the world, my Messiah suffered a terrible and violent death. But he was vindicated by God through his resurrection. And in his resurrection, he revealed that evil and violence does not have the last word. Rather, God has the last word. And God's last word is that, behold, I'm making all things new. So a question for us today. On this particular day, do you yearn to be made new? Do you yearn for others to be made new? Do you yearn for all things to be made new? I want to explain something just a little bit here. I didn't grow up in the church. My family in my childhood really didn't attend church much. But when I was a youth, I started to here and there get involved in church. And one of the things that I heard early in my experience of church was this: Mike, what you got to do, what you need to do, is you need to invite Jesus into your heart. And what that meant was I needed to tell Jesus that I was a sinner, that I had sinned. I needed to invite Jesus to forgive me of my sins, and I needed to receive from Jesus a promise that someday after my death I would have a place in heaven. And I'm not really here to criticize that a lot. I'm just here to say that there's a whole lot more. There's a whole lot more to the truth of God than that. What God is doing is making all things new. And that includes me. And what God is doing in the world is that God is inviting me to join God in bringing that newness present here now. Do you yearn to be made new? That's the heart of what Jesus is getting at. And frankly, it's about what Pastor Matt and I have been preaching about over the last 7 weeks. And through these disciplines, we meet with God, and God does a new work in us, and God does a new work in the world through us as we cooperate with what God is doing. And at this moment, this day, the world needs people who are being made new and who are joining God in making all things new. I would ask you this morning, whatever place that you've come from today, is there anything more beautiful than this life that Jesus has offered you? A life of reconciliation and providing hope. A life where the folks who are pushed to the margins are brought to the center. A life where you get to find deeper purpose because you're gifted and asked to use that gift. A life where you are asked to sit across from the table of a person that you don't know and maybe you don't even like, but Jesus has named them as your brother and sister. A life where you pray over places of brokenness that God might, through you, bring a greater sense of the kingdom. A place where children are loved and taught and learned from. Is there a more beautiful life? I would ask you, right now, do you yearn for God to make you new? Do you yearn for God to make others brand new? Do you yearn for God to do God's new work in the world through you? I think that what we're being called to is much more than inviting Jesus into our heart and having a hope in heaven. I'm convinced that what we're being invited to is we are being invited into the heart of Jesus. So that what breaks his heart breaks our heart. And what brings Jesus joy gives us joy. And the places that Jesus wants to heal, we want to join in on that. This world that God loves desperately needs people who are being made new.